They said I looked calm, that I didn't even flinch when the first lie landed in the courtroom like a thunderclap. Maybe they thought I was broken, or maybe they thought I was too shocked to fight back. But I was never shocked. I expected every word. I saw it coming months before we ever stepped inside that courtroom. And I let it happen. I needed it to. Because while they spoke, I watched. And while they smiled, I remembered. Every little twitch of their lips, every subtle shake in their voice when they forced their lies to life. I watched them rewrite the truth with a straight face, each of them pretending they didn't twist the knife in me first. They made me the villain. But this isn't a story about a man framed. This is a story about how I burned them down, slow, precise, and with no way out. My name is Caleb Merrick. I was a cybersecurity consultant. Clean record, quiet life, worked for Fortune 500 companies, and got paid enough to keep to myself. I was engaged to a woman named Rachel Ellis. The people who betrayed me were her brother, her best friend, my boss, and a prosecutor who liked being on TV more than being right. I was accused of embezzling over $3 million from Whitemore Data Systems, the firm I worked for, a number that just happened to match a shell account Rachel's brother Daniel had access to. But when the charges came down, it wasn't Danielle who ended up in cuffs. It was me. They said I hacked the system, fabricated invoices, hid money offshore. They claimed I threatened to expose Rachel's affair with my boss Colin unless they kept quiet. They said I was unstable, vengeful, obsessed. They didn't even blink when they said it. I sat there every day of that trial and watched them strip me down to a story they could control. Daniel took the stand with a tear in his eye and talked about how I manipulated his sister. Rachel backed him up, wearing that expression people wear when they pretend they're afraid of someone who loved them. Colin swore he had no idea what I was capable of, then cried crocodile tears over my betrayal. And Natalie, Rachel's friend since college, spoke with the kind of moral outrage only liars can summon on command. Each of them swore under oath, and each of them lied with a mouth full of poison. The prosecutor, Vincent Graves, was an old friend of Colin's. They shared golf weekends and business contacts. He called me a dangerous digital saboteur and told the jury I had a history of controlling behavior, cherry-picking emails and messages I never sent. I could see the hunger in his eyes when the cameras turned his way. He wanted this to be the case that launched his political career. I didn't defend myself, not once. My lawyer begged me to testify, but I stayed silent, took the character assassination without flinching, let them feel like they'd won. Because I wasn't there to convince the jury, I was there to collect evidence. You can't expose the rot until the whole house stinks. The jury took 2 days. They found me not guilty. Lack of hard evidence, too many unanswered questions. But they said it with reluctance. My reputation didn't walk out with me. It stayed behind, bleeding on the floor of that courtroom. They thought they'd ruin me, thought I'd slink away in shame. But I walked out with everything I needed. I had copies of emails they thought deleted, backup drives from Rachel's laptop, passwords she once gave me when we trusted each other, Daniel's burner phone data from a cache I'd pulled off our shared home network, Colin's business records, Natalie's fake charities and donation scams. I didn't even need to look far. They were messy and arrogant. For 6 months, I lived in silence, let them relax. Let them think I was just another bitter man crushed by justice. I watched Rachel marry Colin and smile for the tabloids. I watched Daniel get promoted and start investing with money he never earned. I saw Natalie start a nonprofit that funneled donor money into private accounts. Graves launched his campaign for district attorney on a platform of integrity and public trust. They built their lives on top of my grave. So I dug. Every night, I worked in a dark apartment that smelled like dust and vengeance. No lights except the soft glow of screens. I mapped their timelines, cross-referenced dates, receipts, phone logs, deleted messages. I reached out to old IT contacts and called in favors. Quietly, carefully, I built a case against each of them. Not one the court would hear, but one the world would. When I was done, I didn't just have dirt. I had explosives. And I was ready to light the match. I started with Daniel. I leaked financial records from a dummy firm he'd been laundering money through, the same one he used to funnel funds out of Whitemore before pinning it on me. I sent it anonymously to a whistleblower watchdog group that loved high-profile takedowns. It took a week before the FBI opened an inquiry. His arrest made local news. By day 2, it hit national outlets. Rachel tried to play the grieving sister, but within hours, photos surfaced of her and Colin vacationing in Europe during the supposed turmoil of my trial. I didn't leak those, not yet. The media just smelled blood. Then I went for Colin. I released confidential reports showing he'd been taking kickbacks from data contractors in exchange for client lists. I dropped them into the inbox of a journalist he once tried to sue for defamation. She remembered. And she didn't hesitate. Whitemore's board voted him out within 24 hours. The story spiraled. Shareholders sued. More dirt came up. None of it mine, but I could have predicted it. Crooks always bury more than one body. Next came Natalie. Her fake charities crumbled when an anonymous file dump reached the IRS. I'd been patient with her, made sure every transaction looked like it came from someone inside her team. The government tore through her records like a chainsaw through silk. She didn't just lose her nonprofit. She lost her apartment, her license, her speaking gigs. Rachel was the last. She'd watched everyone else fall, but still thought she could play victim. I let her feel safe until I mailed a package to Colin's ex-wife, complete with proof of their affair starting before the divorce, bank statements showing hush money Rachel paid to Colin's assistant, and pregnancy records she tried to have sealed. The assistant, it turned out, wasn't so loyal once she saw the receipts. She went public, told every dirty detail. Rachel's clean image cracked on live TV. Her book deal vanished, sponsorships pulled out, Colin left her. And as for Graves, the tape was grainy, but it was enough. I'd planted a mic years ago in my old condo, back when Rachel and I were happy, before I knew what she was. It caught Graves bragging about tying up loose ends before the trial, about how someone had to take the fall. He didn't name names. But the implication was clear. I sent it to every news outlet, wrapped in a dossier of campaign finance irregularities. He dropped out of the race in disgrace. A week later, the Bar Association launched a formal investigation. One by one, I torched their masks. The world saw them for what they were, liars in suits playing noble while they fed on the innocent. I didn't gloat, I didn't brag, I just watched. They took everything from me, my name, my job, my life. But in the end, they lost more. Because reputation isn't built on truth. It's built on the illusion of it. And once that illusion shatters, it never comes back. Destruction doesn't echo in just one direction. After the fall, there's always the debris, the screams, the questions, the people circling the wreckage trying to make sense of what just happened. And that's where I thrived. The media wasn't done. The fall of Graves alone was enough to keep every local paper and national outlet sniffing around. But when they saw the collapse wasn't isolated, that it was part of a chain reaction connecting 4 different high-profile people, they couldn't let it go. I hadn't just exposed their secrets. I'd woven their stories into one long, unraveling lie. And journalists fed off that. They started chasing leads I hadn't even planted. They pulled up court records, tax filings, even college transcripts. They found inconsistencies in Graves' law school history. They uncovered old harassment claims buried during Colin's corporate rise. And with every new piece, I didn't have to move a finger. The fire was self-sustaining now. Rachel went underground. The woman who once posed for magazine spreads about women in tech leadership was hiding in her sister's basement in Ohio. A friend of a friend saw her at a grocery store, no makeup, sunglasses on, buying wine at 9 in the morning. The internet swarmed with fake sympathy and real glee. The comment sections under her old TED Talks turned venomous. Colin tried to pivot, claimed to be writing a book about corporate sabotage and betrayal, but the publisher he pitched it to leaked the manuscript. It was riddled with lies, half plagiarized from online posts. He became a joke in the business world. Natalie, the loudest moral voice during the trial, filed a defamation suit against 2 bloggers. One of them countersued and dragged her into discovery. Emails emerged, damning ones. She dropped the suit, then fled to Europe. Daniel was in custody. He took a deal, blamed it all on Colin and Rachel. I knew he would. His type always folds first. But what mattered more than his sentence was that the prosecutors now had to pick through the fallout of a fake trial built on real corruption. And me? I moved. Not to run, to reset. A cabin in Montana, far from cameras, with just enough internet to watch their lives implode. I didn't want to be in the world. I just wanted to hear it scream their names the way it used to scream mine. But quiet only lasts so long. One morning, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photo, me, walking into a grocery store, looking over my shoulder. On the back, scribbled in clean, blocky handwriting, were the words, "We're not the only ones you hurt." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was scared, but because I knew this wasn't over. I'd made enemies. Some were collateral. Some weren't in my sights at all. But revenge never ends cleanly. It spreads. Turns out, Colin had more ties than I realized. Old partners. People who'd benefited from his fraud. When he fell, so did their projects, their bonuses, their secrets. Some of them started digging. Rachel's assistant, the one who flipped on her, had gone public too loudly. 3 weeks after her interview aired, she was found dead in a hotel room. Officially, suicide. But her mother posted online that her daughter didn't even drink. The story didn't go far. People were already tired of the drama. But I saw the pattern. I wasn't just burning lives. I'd lit something bigger. So I went deeper. If they wanted to sniff around, I'd give them something to chew on. I leaked a cache of documents showing Graves' early career had been funded by a group tied to a lobbying firm, later banned for corruption. Buried inside was proof he had knowingly used falsified evidence in 2 older cases. That got attention from a national watchdog group. They started opening boxes long sealed. While they played with that fire, I turned to Rachel's old investors. Some of them were foreign. One, a man named Harold Klein, had a habit of using litigation as a form of intimidation. He sent men to my old apartment. I wasn't there, but I knew they'd come again. So I left bait, a hard drive with fake account data, GPS logs, and names that looked like whistleblowers. It was encrypted, but breakable. They'd think they got something. What they really got was a tracker. Every time they opened it, I got their IP. Within a week, I mapped out every address they worked from, every time zone, every office. I knew where they slept. That's when I decided to end it. Not with a whisper, with something final. I created a digital tombstone, a live site, backed up on multiple servers across countries, impossible to wipe. It contained every document, email, audio clip, and piece of metadata tied to their crimes. It named everyone, dated everything, not speculation, proof. It was beautiful, cold, precise, a monument to truth. And I didn't post it. Not yet. First, I sent them warnings. A USB drive on Graves' doorstep. A folder of unblurred security footage mailed to Colin's last known address. A flash of old chat logs sent to Klein's business line from an anonymous email. I wanted them to know, I wanted them to feel it. The silence before the blast. Then I set the date. Midnight 2 weeks later, the site would go live. I sent invitations. No demands, no threats, just a countdown. Some tried to stop it. One night, I came home and found the door kicked in. Papers scattered. They'd searched, but they didn't find the core. My fail-safe wasn't even in the cabin. It was on a thumb drive mailed to a friend in Iceland, with a dead man's switch programmed to launch the site if I didn't check in. And I didn't check in. I let the clock run out. When the site went live, it crashed servers across 3 states. It was too big. News stations picked it up within hours. By morning, every name in those files was trending. The damage was done. Klein's firm folded. Graves disappeared. Colin tried to issue a denial, but the audio clips were undeniable. His voice calm and smug, detailing how he and Graves worked the case against me. Rachel's voice surfaced too, discussing strategies on how to manipulate the jury's sympathy. Her tears during the trial were rehearsed. That got her pulled into 3 open investigations. She tried to sue me. The judge threw it out. I didn't run. I walked into a station in Portland and gave a statement. Not a confession. A declaration. They asked if I regretted anything. I told them I regretted not watching the trial again. Now that the truth was out, it would be a comedy. They couldn't charge me with anything. Everything I'd exposed was true, even the manipulations, legal gray zones, untraceable sources, third parties. I'd been careful. And no one wanted to be the next person I accidentally exposed. So I walked out again, not free this time. Untouchable. The world doesn't just forget, it festers. Once the headlines fade, the questions begin. Not from the public, they move on, but from the system, the men in suits behind the curtain, the ones who don't care about justice, only control. I knew I wasn't done the second I stepped out of that Portland station. Not because I had more to burn, but because people like me don't get to vanish quietly. Not when we humiliate the machine that feeds them. The website didn't just expose a few rotten people. It pulled threads that led into entire corners of the justice system, tech industries, and private finance. Reporters used my data to dig into cases that never should have gone to trial. Politicians got nervous, CEOs resigned. It was never just about Rachel and her circle. They were the beginning, I was the spark. And some people wanted to extinguish me not for revenge, but for precedent. So I prepared. I set up rotations, 3 addresses I cycled through, all registered under shell names. I paid in crypto, cashed out just enough to live. I used burner phones, none active longer than a week. I erased my digital fingerprints. If I wanted to exist, it had to be off-grid. But you can only erase yourself so much before you stop being human. And I wasn't done being human. Not yet. It was my father's death that brought me back into the light. He had been sick, pancreatic cancer. Quiet man, rarely spoke, after my mother passed. I hadn't seen him since the trial. I don't know if he ever believed the accusations, he never said. But he left me something, a safety deposit box key, mailed through a lawyer with no return address. Inside was a journal, his. Dozens of entries, most of them ramblings about my childhood, his regrets, memories of my mother. But one entry stopped me cold. It described a man who visited him 6 weeks after my verdict, said he worked for an interested party, asked questions about me, where I'd go if I disappeared, what I'd told my father, said if he didn't cooperate, he'd lose access to certain benefits. His medication had been part of a private foundation's trial program. The threat was subtle, but my father knew how to read threats. He never told me, never reported it, just wrote it down and locked it away. The journal named no names, but I knew who it was. Not Colin, not Rachel, not even Graves. This was deeper. This was the people who owned Colin, the ones I hadn't touched yet. It should have scared me. Instead, it gave me purpose again. I started tracing the money behind Whitemore's shell accounts. Not the ones tied to Daniel's fraud, the ones before that. Old transactions, written off as external consulting routed through foreign entities. They led to a firm called Archon Holdings. Nobody publicly listed, no real address, but their fingerprints were everywhere in the documents I had leaked. Archon had funded Graves' first campaign, had invested in a real estate startup tied to Rachel's father, had been listed as strategic partners in two of Colin's early ventures. Everything circled back. And Archon didn't like sunlight. I needed a lever, something they feared, so I reached out to someone I never thought I'd speak to again. Her name was Elise, a journalist. We'd been friends in college, almost something more, before life tore us in different directions. She had integrity, the kind that hadn't been bought yet. She'd written about whistleblowers, cover-ups, surveillance tech. I sent her an anonymous tip with just one word, Archon. She called me 3 days later. She knew. I didn't give her everything at first, just enough to chase, enough to scare the right people. She found the rest. Archon had ties to a private correctional corporation, one that specialized in data services for prisons, predictive policing algorithms, inmate monitoring software. Graves had pushed 3 contracts through for them. Rachel had designed one of the systems during her early career. Colin had overseen security architecture. The trial they put me through wasn't random. It was a play, a performance to validate software they were trying to sell. If their system could predict people like me, their investors could cash out. They needed a villain, a case with high drama, something to sell. I was product testing, and I'd survived. Elise published the story under a pseudonym. Didn't matter. People knew it was her. She went dark the day it launched. Her paper was threatened, her editor fired, but the story went nuclear. Congressional hearings were called, investigations opened, but Archon was a ghost. The people in the chairs were stand-ins, puppets. But I wanted the ones behind them, so I forced their hand. I broke my own silence. A video, black background, my face in shadow, my voice calm. I explained what they'd done, named names, showed documents. Then I gave them an offer. Step into the light, or I will drag you by the throat. They didn't. Well, others did. Whistleblowers came forward. 3 former engineers from the prison tech company, an accountant from Graves' office, a woman who once worked logistics for Archon's private security contractor. All of them had stories, documents, secrets. My war had become theirs. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was exposure. Systemic. Massive. And in the chaos, something strange happened. I became a symbol. Not a hero. No one called me that. But a warning. Proof that if you push the wrong man too far, he might build a furnace and shove you into it. They tried to paint me as unstable again, but it didn't stick. Too much truth out there now, too many people watching. So they changed tactics. One night, I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that creeps in before something awful. My power was cut, backup batteries fried, my routers offline. I grabbed my emergency pack and ran. A drone followed me for 10 miles through forest. I lost it in the rain. 2 days later, the cabin burned. I watched it from a ridge with binoculars. Smoke curling into the black sky. They weren't trying to kill me. They were erasing me. I went deeper underground, changed names again, burned my last accounts, disappeared from everything. The war was public now. But I wasn't, because I had one more move left. The ending. I chose the cemetery because no one watches it. People keep their heads down around grief. It's a place of whispers, of footprints in mud, of eyes swollen from regret. It's where you can bury more than just bodies. You can bury stories. You can bury names. I waited near my father's headstone. 2 hours of silence before the man arrived. Late 50s. Slim suit, no tie, gray hair shaved close. Hands in his coat like he was just another mourner with nowhere else to be. I knew his name. Samuel Hart. Archon's original funder. He'd never held a title. never had a LinkedIn, but he owned the shadows the others walked in. He sat on the bench across from me without saying a word. "You burned your last house," I said. He didn't blink. "I've been burned before," he replied. I handed him the drive. Not the original, a copy. One of several scattered across 3 continents. "You have 2 choices: let it end or start a fire that'll burn everything you built." He looked at it, weighing it like it mattered. It didn't. "Why come here?" he asked. "You could have stayed hidden. You had leverage." "Leverage is for people still playing the game. I'm done playing." "You think this is justice?" I smiled. "Nope. Justice is a fairy tale. This is truth." He left with the drive. Never looked back. That was his tell. Men like him only walk away when they know they've lost the board, not just the piece. Within 2 weeks, Archon Holdings shut down. Not formally, not with press releases, quietly. Offices emptied, websites vanished, shell companies absorbed or erased, contractors dissolved, the ecosystem devoured itself. Elise resurfaced with new protection. Her full expose hit every major outlet. She didn't name me. Didn't have to. The world knew. Colin overdosed on sleeping pills in a motel outside of Tucson. They called it accidental. I didn't. Rachel was last seen at a small airport in Nevada. No one's heard from her since. No photos, no charges, just gone. Like she'd never existed. Natalie resurfaced under a new name, tried to launch a self-help podcast. It lasted 3 episodes. The comments were brutal. Daniel's appeal was denied. He's serving 11 years, maybe less if he behaves. But he won't. He never could. Graves lost his license. Works at a law firm in Florida now, handling slip and falls and DUI pleas. A whisper of who he was. The court never cleared my name. They don't do that. They just forget. But people remember. The kind that matter do. I don't live off-grid anymore. I have a name again. A modest place. Work that pays just enough. No headlines, no cameras, just space. Just breath. Some nights, I still hear the courtroom. Not the words. The silence between them. The kind of silence that used to feel like defeat. Now it feels like warning. There are still people like them out there. Always will be. But now they watch the shadows. They hesitate. They wonder if the person they're framing is just another target or someone with a furnace already lit. I was never the one on trial. They were. And in the end, the world saw who they really were.